Please do not let my brother's life be worth nothing more than a 25-year punishment. Please do not leave those boys to wonder whether Kouri might track them or their children down in the future. Please do not create a possibility for Kouri to endanger Eric's boys, my daughters, my family, or anyone else.
You just heard Eric's sister, Kouri Richins, Brown directly speaking to the judge in a courtroom on what should have been Eric's 44th birthday behind her. At the defense table, in a lime green jail uniform, sat the woman who killed him. Kouri Richins rolled her eyes through every family member who approached that podium. She pulled faces. She whispered to her attorney while Eric's sisters described what 4 years of fighting for justice had done to their lives. And when 3 counselors stepped forward to read the victim impact statements written by her own sons, ages 9, 11, and 13, she pulled faces at their words too. Judge Richard M. Razik had heard enough. After nearly 5 hours of testimony, he sentenced Kouri Richins to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case that produced that sentence came down to 3 things: financial desperation, a calculated affair, and a decision that Eric Richins was worth more dead than alive. Her real estate business was, in the words of the forensic accountant who testified at trial, imploding. She had borrowed $250,000 from Eric's accounts without his knowledge. She was millions of dollars in debt. The market had shifted against her, and she could not move the properties she was carrying. In 2020, Eric had restructured his estate. He placed everything into a living trust controlled by his sister Katie, specifically for the benefit of his 3 sons. Kouri had seen those documents. She understood the arrangement. The only path that led money directly to her was life insurance. His life was insured for approximately $2.2 million across several policies, including one she had applied for using his forged signature, a policy that went into effect just 10 days after the first attempt on his life. At the same time, she was deep into a relationship with Josh Grossman, a business partner who took the stand at trial, and became visibly emotional as 2 weeks before Eric died, she wrote to Grossman, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect." In another message from the same period, "I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together." She also wrote a letter, found in her jail cell and entered into evidence, that outlined plans to go after Eric's sisters. The letter prosecutors called the Walk the Dog letter contained language targeting Amy and her daughters. Katie told the court at sentencing that those daughters are both under the age of 10. The first attempt came on Valentine's Day, 2022. Kouri had told the family housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, that she needed something stronger, describing what she wanted as the Michael Jackson stuff. Lauber purchased fentanyl pills for her multiple times in early 2022. On February 14th, Eric ate a sandwich Kouri had prepared. That afternoon, he called 2 friends and told them he felt like he was dying. He broke out in hives. He injected himself with his son's EpiPen, drank an entire bottle of Benadryl, and passed out. He survived. He did not go to a hospital. He called his sisters. He told both of them what he believed had happened. And then he stayed. He had consulted a divorce attorney 2 years earlier and come away afraid. He told both Katie and Amy, separately, without them comparing notes until sentencing day, that he would live through hell every single day until his youngest son turned 18. He believed Kouri was the most evil person he had ever met, and he was certain that if the marriage ended and she received equal custody, his boys would be in danger. So he stayed. He documented conversations. He restructured his estate. He did what he could from inside a situation he had not yet found a safe way out of. 17 days after Valentine's Day, she killed him. The night of March 3rd, she and Eric shared a drink together that evening, ostensibly to celebrate a real estate deal. She told police she then went to sleep in one of her son's rooms because he was having nightmares, and that she returned to the master bedroom around 6 a.m. to find Eric cold and unresponsive. What she did not tell police was what her sons later described to investigators. The bedroom door was locked that night. The television inside was playing at full volume. When her middle son walked down the hallway and tried to get inside, she appeared and told him to go away. Her youngest son also came to the door. He was turned away too. Both boys stood in that hallway while their father died on the other side of it. The autopsy found fentanyl in Eric's blood at 5 times the lethal dose. Illicit fentanyl, not medical grade. He was 39 years old. In the days following Eric's death, prosecutors alleged Kouri still had fentanyl in the house. Her oldest son, Carter, suffered a seizure at the hospital during that period. At the emergency room, Kouri resisted having his blood drawn. 8 jurors deliberated for 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all 5 counts. Aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery. The defense had not called a single witness. 3 counselors stepped to the front of the courtroom and read the victim impact statements written by the boys. Kouri pulled faces while they spoke. Carter is 13. He was 9 when his father was killed. He goes to school wearing his father's clothes. His statement said that after Eric died, Kouri would put him and his brothers in the basement while she was with the neighbor. He described her threatening to kill his lizard, locking him in his room, and leaving the boys largely to care for themselves. He said he went from being scared for his life to feeling genuinely good about himself once she was arrested. His words to the judge, "I miss my dad. I do not miss how my life used to be. I don't miss Kouri, I will tell you that." Ashton is 11. He addressed his statement directly to her. He said she took his father for no reason other than greed and cared only about herself. He described walking his younger brother to the bus stop each morning, feeding him, watching over him while she was absent. He described animals dying one by one. A kitten left outside to be killed by raccoons because she wouldn't allow it in the garage. Chickens that starved, bunnies that froze because she refused to get a heat lamp. "Her name makes me feel hateful and ashamed," he wrote. "With her in prison, I will be able to live a happy and successful life without fear of her hurting me or anyone I love." Weston is 9. He was 5 when Eric died. He has spent more than half of his entire life in the world she created. His statement was 4 sentences that said everything. "I want her to go to prison forever. If she got out, I would be so scared, really mad, and I wouldn't want to go with her anywhere. Once she is gone, I will feel happy, and I will feel safer and relaxed and trust people more." She pulled faces while those words were read aloud. Amy Richins, Eric's sister, told the court she lost her position as a professor at Montana Tech University on the very day she was subpoenaed to appear in this case. Eric had been proud of her completing her PhD. She described it calmly as one more thing Kouri's choices stripped from her family. She also disclosed something that has never been part of any prior coverage of this case. Under the sustained and compounding stress of the investigation, the litigation, and 4 years of relentless public attack on her family, Amy and her husband suffered a traumatic miscarriage of twins. They lost those children. She said it quietly, looking at the judge. Kouri's actions, she told him, did not just end one life. They reached out and stifled the lives of her unborn children as well. That loss does not appear in any police report. It is not in any trial exhibit. It is not in any sentencing memorandum. It appeared for the first time in open court on Eric's birthday. Amy also raised something else not previously addressed publicly. During the trial, the courtroom layout meant she could not see the evidence screens from where she was required to sit as the designated victim representative. When she asked for accommodation, she was told the trial was being broadcast on court TV, and she could go home and watch from there. She has still not been able to watch the full trial back. The evidence presented about her brother's death remains largely unseen by the person who fought hardest to make sure it was presented at all. At the end of the hearing, Kouri Richins was given the opportunity to speak. She stood at the podium for 48 minutes, not to the judge, but to her sons. She denied the murder. She implied Eric had his own faults and his own secrets. She told her boys love was enough, that she was coming home, that she would never stop calling even if the calls were blocked, and never stop writing even if the letters came back unopened. She told them not to believe the people raising them. She repeated the phrase, "Be like your dad," so many times that what began as tribute became, by the end, something that felt more like a tool, invoking the man she killed to undermine the family standing between her and the children he left behind. There was one moment during the hearing when Kouri Richins cried. It was not when her oldest son said he doesn't miss her. It was not when her middle son said her name makes him feel hateful and ashamed. It was not when her youngest said once she is gone, he will feel happy and safe. The tears came when her attorney read her mother's letter. When her brother stood at the podium and said he missed her, she could feel grief for her own loss. She had nothing left for the children who told a judge they are afraid of her. The judge listened to all 48 minutes. Then he sentenced her to life without parole. The children's book Kouri Richins wrote and called it Are You With was produced by a ghostwriter she paid $2,500 and promoted on morning television with prepared talking points and a viewer discount code. Trial evidence showed she described it in a text to her brother as a stepping stone to get ready for the big one, the bigger project she was already planning. She was not processing grief. She was building a business model off a death she had caused. The book was pulled from Amazon and every other retailer after the conviction. The night after Eric died, Kouri searched her phone for women's prisons in Utah. She also searched for luxury prisons for the rich in America. What she found in that search was the Utah State Prison in Draper, a decades-old complex that had housed the state's female inmates for generations. That is the facility she appears to have been factoring into whatever she planned next. That prison closed in July 2022, 4 months after she killed Eric. The facility she is actually entering opened while she was still free, still promoting the book, still sitting across from morning show hosts describing herself as a grieving widow. The Utah State Correctional Facility, a $1 billion, 1.3 million square foot complex in the northwest corner of Salt Lake City, replaced the old prison entirely in the summer of 2022. She never researched it. She never prepared for it. The prison she planned for is gone. The one she is entering is where she will spend the rest of her life. The facility operates on a direct supervision model, correctional officers stationed inside the housing units, present in the living spaces in real time. The buildings were constructed with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the surrounding mountains. In March 2025, a scabies outbreak required treatment for 140 inmates. The building is new. The conditions that come with confining hundreds of people in close proximity are not. The women's section divides into 2 buildings. Dell houses general population, adjacent to culinary, gymnasium, education, programming, and religious services. Emerald houses restricted housing, for inmates separated from general population for safety or behavioral reasons. Before she reaches permanent housing, she processes through the Fremont building, the receiving and orientation unit where every incoming inmate is documented, assessed, and assigned. The county jail, the courtroom, the book tour, the morning show appearances, all of it becomes background the moment she steps through intake. Phone calls inside the UCSF are capped at 15 minutes, monitored, and recorded in full. She cannot receive incoming calls. She can only make outgoing collect calls to a pre-approved contact list that can be updated once every 6 months. Greg Hall, the man who stood before the court asking for mercy on her behalf, who has been in daily phone and in-person contact with her throughout her entire time in Summit County Jail, loses that access when she transfers. The relationship that sustained her through the trial, through the verdict, and through 48 minutes at that podium ends at intake. Visitation is Saturdays and Sundays only, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., for pre-approved visitors with no prior felony convictions. All mail is copied by corrections staff before it reaches her. Books must be new and shipped directly from a publisher or bookstore. She will not be the most high-profile woman in that facility. Ruby Frank, the Utah parenting influencer convicted in 2023 of child abuse, is already there. So is her co-defendant, Jody Hildebrandt. Both are serving consecutive terms. Kouri Richins arrives into a facility where other women with nationally covered cases have already settled into permanent routines. Judge M. Razik acknowledged from the bench that he wanted to issue a permanent protective order barring Kouri from contacting her sons unless they chose to reach out first. Then he said he couldn't. Under current Utah statute, the continuous protective framework applies to survivors of domestic violence. Eric Richins is not a survivor. He is deceased. The law as written does not extend that protection to the children of a murder victim when the convicted parent still holds parental rights that have not been legally terminated. M. Razik said it plainly, the legislature needs to fill this gap. As of sentencing day, it has not. Kouri told the court she intends to keep calling and keep writing regardless. Beyond the protective order gap, a second criminal prosecution is waiting. In 2025, prosecutors filed more than 20 charges covering. Those cases continue moving through Utah courts while she sits inside on a 15-minute monitored call. The restitution hearing is set for July 31, 2026. Prosecutors are seeking over $1.1 million in repayment to auto owners' insurance, $352,000 to True Stage Insurance, and $1.39 million to Summit County for the cost of her public defense. The defense has 28 days to file a motion for a new trial. In a case where 8 jurors convicted on all 5 counts in 3 hours without the defense calling a single witness, that appeal has a long road ahead of it. Eric Richins' sports teams still break the huddle saying his name. His father stood at the podium on what should have been his son's 44th birthday and said Eric treated people with respect, showed gratitude for the smallest kindnesses, and gave freely of himself because that was simply who he was. His sister Amy described the day he showed up outside her school with flowers and took her truck off-roading in the mountains because he said she needed mud on her tires. It was exhilarating and terrifying, she said, but I felt safe because he was there. That was Eric. He made life bigger. His sons were 9, 7, and 5 when they lost him. They are 13, 11, and 9 now. They are being raised in the home of his sister and her husband, the people their father trusted with everything he had. And from what they said in their own words, in an official court filing before a judge, they are growing up well. They are growing up without fear of her. The judge who sentenced Kouri Richins had sat through the entire trial, 40 witnesses, every exhibit, weeks at that bench. He cleared his entire calendar for sentencing to make sure everyone had time to be heard. He listened to 48 minutes of her speaking to her sons. He heard the defense argue that life without parole is reserved for serial killers and people who murder children, that this case did not rise to that threshold. Then he noted the sequence: Valentine's Day attempt, 17 days of preparation, completion by poison, a false alibi built around her own sons, a children's book marketed while still a suspect, civil lawsuits filed against the woman now raising her boys. A person who commits that sequence of acts in that way for that reason, he said, is simply too dangerous to ever be free. The sentence is life without parole. This story is not over. Every time any part of this case moves, the appeal, the fraud trial, the restitution hearing, the juvenile court proceedings, this channel will be here to cover it accurately and completely. Subscribe and turn on notifications so the next update reaches you when it happens. Eric's family deserves people who are still paying attention.